Adding sounds to a button is very simple in Flash. All we need to do is import the sound and then add that sound to the down state of the button. I'm going to go to the File menu and import to my library some sounds. So I'm going to get this sound called blip. Another one here, IDG organ, oh yeah guitar, and up. Those are going to go into my library, and if I come here I will see those sounds added. So there's the blip, the IDG organ, oh yeah guitar, and up. So first I just want to have a little click sound when I press this button called click me. So I'm going to come into the button itself, burrow down in, and I'm just going to add another layer, and I'll make this layer sounds, and I'm going to add a keyframe on the down state. And all I'm going to do for that keyframe is go to the properties, go into the sound area of the properties for that frame and choose the sound I want. And my sync is going to be start. I could use event as well. If you remember back to our chart in terms of the different sync types, both event and start are going to play to the end of that sound regardless of where the playhead is. And they're both triggered by a keyframe. So I have my blip set up as start in this frame. Let's test it. And as I click that button, you can hear the little blip sound. Now I could do the same thing for guitar. I can come here, select that button, burrow down in. I'm going to add another layer for sounds. Again, I always like to have my sounds as the bottom layer of any object. Insert a keyframe. And here I'm going to choose the oh yeah guitar. This is the blues lick. And notice that there is an area here where you can repeat the sound if you want. So you could repeat it a certain number of times. I only have it repeating once. But if you wanted a sound repeat, say 20 times, you could put in 20 there. I'm going to set my sync to start so that the user can't click on this button multiple times and create multiple instances of this sound. So now let's test this. Now I also have a script here running in my root that when I click that button, guitar_btn, it's going to run this function called go guitar, and is simply going to and stopping on a frame called guitar, which is this frame here. And then I have a button which is enclosed in a movie clip, and in that movie clip my actions take that return button called go root frame 1 when it's clicked, and all that's doing is going back to the root movie clip timeline and it's going back and stopping on frame 1. The advantage of putting this button in a movie clip, as we saw earlier, is that this button is self-contained and I can use it in any project. I don't have to write any other code. Wherever I place it, it's going to go to frame 1, and I also have to worry about adding code then in for this frame for this button. It's already pre-programmed for me. So I do the same thing for organ and piano. And I could add those sounds to those buttons. So right now, if I test this, organ simply goes to that frame and stops. There's no sound being played, so I can return. So I could add the sound to this button. As an alternative, I could go into organ, go into that frame, go to my library, and I actually have a play and a stop button that I've created. I'm going to drag those onto my stage. And then for my play button, I'm going to click down into it. Again, I'm going to add another layer here for sounds. I'm going to insert a keyframe, go to the properties, and I'm going to add the sound for the organ. And again, I'll use start. And then for the stop button, I'm going to burrow down into it, add a layer for sounds, insert a keyframe. And here, I'm going to add the same sound, and my sync event is going to be stop. This will give me control over being able to stop the sound mid-play if I wanted. So let's just go back to our scene and test this. So now I click on organ, I'm going to that frame for the organ, and I now have control over whether I want to play it or not. So I can click play. So let me click it again, and then I can click stop. And so I can stop it midstream. And so I now have given the user a little more control over playing and stopping that sound. So that's a very simple way to add buttons. There are other ways to do this with some programming code and give us a little more power and flexibility, where we can do things such as changing the right and left channel, we can adjust the volume and so forth. But that requires some programming, and we get into that in the second Flash class.